afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. Welcome. My name is Lizzie Hunter. I'm the lead magnet teacher here at South Miami Senior High. And my co-host today is Mr. Ramon Lopez.
Hello.
Hello. We're
Good afternoon.
happy that you're joining us for our webinar today on illustrative digital painting in Adobe Photoshop. Woo! Mr. Lopez is very excited. This is his program, his baby, so we're going to be learning along with him today. First, a little bit about the two people who you've connected with today. I have been at South Miami Senior High for 14 years, proud leader of the Magnet Fine Arts program at our school and the lead magnet teacher for the school's programs. I also teach the Advanced Placement Art and Design courses, dual enrollment courses through FIU, and I myself am a practicing artist. And this is Mr. Lopez. He's going to tell you a little bit about himself.
Hello, and good afternoon. Thank you all so much for joining us for this webinar where we talk about digital painting and how it relates to graphic design and illustration, one of our magnet programs. As Ms. Hunter introduced, my name is Ramon Lopez. I'm the magnet photography and the magnet graphic design and illustration teacher here at South Miami Senior High, Cobra Country, right? I have a BFA in illustration and I have a master's in art education. I am also a practicing artist. I have an art and design studio that I founded in 2017. I'm also a board member for the American Institute of Graphic Artists, and I am the National Art Honor Society sponsor here at our school. I'm done.
All right, so a little bit about South Miami Senior. Our school actually opened in 1971, meaning that we are celebrating our golden 50th anniversary this year. In 1986, we established the magnet programs, the visual performing arts magnet programs at our school. And today's webinar is a little sneak peek at one of the programs that we offer. We're one of the earlier visual performing arts programs within Dade County Public Schools. And in 2015, we were designated a Cambridge school. We are the only visual performing arts magnet high school where you can also pursue a Cambridge diploma if that is something that interests you. So we have that unique designation and very special opportunity for interested students. So we are looking for talented, driven students who would like to pursue their passion in the arts while experiencing a traditional high school. If that sounds like something that you would like to do for your high school experience, then this might be the place for you. On screen here, we're also featuring our Magnet School of Excellence designation from Magnet Schools of America. Very proud of that award and the hard work that our students and our teachers put in to their programs. Where are we located? Well, let's start by saying good news. Through the magnet programs, it doesn't matter where you live or whether or not South Miami is your home school. You can attend this school regardless of where you live. But just to give you an idea of where we are, we're right off of the Palmetto Expressway and Miller Drive. So two large access roadways that make it a little bit easier to get to us. We're also not that far from US 1. So, there are lots of ways to approach our school, regardless of where you live. And a little bit about the magnet offerings at our school. So these are the programs that we are currently accepting applications for. The regular magnet application cycle actually ended in January, but we have good news. We have already processed all of those applicants and we have a small number of seats in all of our programs available, and we are trying to fill those last few seats through the off-cycle program. So we offer magnets in band, fine art, graphic design and illustration, which is what today's webinar is about, multimedia broadcasting, orchestra, and photography. So if you decide to apply, I'm going to first off say apply very soon so you don't miss out on the 1 or 2 seats that are available. And then we would schedule you for an audition. Acceptance into our magnet programs are based on talent audition results. We also offer a number of other things. So we have all of these additional choice programs, and these are things that you can do alongside magnet. So again, if you decide to come to our school for one of our magnet offerings, you can also participate in the JROTC program in computer programming, virtual reality, FIU dual enrollment courses, health sciences, theater, and Cambridge. So there's a lot to offer for all of the students at our school. Mr. Lopez?
So a little bit more about life here at South Miami Senior High. We do follow the typical bell schedule in terms of what time we start and what time we dismiss. We're running from 7:20 to 2:20 p.m. On any given day, you're going to have 4 classes, and then on the next day, you're going to have your other 4 classes. So we're running 8 periods, and it's a block schedule, which means that you have plenty of room for your core academic classes and your magnet classes if you were to get accepted, and other electives on top of that. Okay, so we have, as Ms. Hunter had mentioned, we are a traditional high school, and there is a magnet school within a smaller traditional high school setting. So what I love about our school is it's not too big and it's not too small, and it does have a lot of different programs and offerings for your interests. We want you to succeed and we want you to reach your full potential. Okay, so we have sports, we have clubs, and we have a lot of student activities and a lot of school pride. All right, so the way that the scheduling works within the magnet school is you would have a magnet class every day built into your 4x4 8-period schedule. Okay, so 2 of your 8 periods would be designated magnet classes for graphic design and illustration. Within those classes, the visual arts magnet classes are all honors classes, right? Towards the end of your high school career, your junior year and your senior year, you are also able to take advanced placement and dual enrollment classes, which, as some of you might already know, they add 2 points to your GPA. An honors class adds an extra point to your GPA average. That's known as a weighted GPA versus your unweighted GPA. And then the AP and dual enrollment classes add 2 points to that as well, okay? So we do have a fine art program, which Ms. Hunter is in charge of our fine art program, and I'm in charge of the graphic design and illustration program. Our classrooms are right next door to each other. So we are co-teaching every other period, our AP class. We're always bouncing ideas off of each other. We're always collaborating. There are some differences and some similarities about fine art and graphic design and illustration, but there's enough differences that we definitely build those programs very rigorously, and you would experience very different things and you would learn very different things. Okay, so within graphic design and illustration, as we're going to be demonstrating today, about half of what you learn is digital art. Digital art refers to Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Animate. So we're covering the gamut of everything that has to do with graphic design, all the way over to illustration and everything in between. A lot of my current students want to be character designers. They want to be concept artists. They want to be entertainment artists for video games and for movies and animations. I have a handful of students that are also interested in graphic design, logo design, interior design. I also have students that are interested in cartooning and graphic novels, okay? So the way that I build the program is we do projects that tackle all of those different themes within graphic design and illustration, and I leave the projects open enough for each student to kind of plug in their own visual styles so that I become more of a support system so that each student is slowly creating a portfolio of the exact kind of program that they might go into college for, and then later on might turn into a career, okay? So we do digital stuff, and then we also get our hands dirty every now and then. At the core of the curriculum is drawing and foundation abilities, and then a good, strong sense of design and creativity and originality as it relates to a specific theme, okay? A lot of graphic designers and illustrators are given a certain topic or theme, and then it's their job to solve that creatively and visually, okay? Fine artists usually work with a personal theme that they are expressing in some kind of media and some kind of concept. So those are the two main differences between fine art and graphic design and illustration, okay? So as I was mentioning a little bit before, we do offer Photoshop, InDesign, Adobe Illustrator, and Adobe Animate, okay? A lot of my students also use Procreate for an iPad. We have computers, we have Mac computers, we have PC computers. They're all running Adobe Creative Cloud. That is a top-notch industry standard program. And we have digital scanners, we have printers, and we also have Wacom graphics stylus, graphics drawing tablets for each of our workstations, okay? So in my classroom, I have a library of art resources and magazines that you could always have access to. We have plenty of storage for your projects and your stuff. We have the big art tables, we have the sinks, and we have 27 computer stations that you could, that's your workstation for the whole time that you're here at our school. You could save all your projects onto there. Nobody else uses those computers besides graphic design and illustration and the photography students. And I separate the accounts. So that really is your like school workstation while you're here, okay? So now it's time for our first video. There's actually two videos that we're gonna be playing today. I went ahead and I scanned a sketchbook drawing that I did from observation and from memory. This is the Everglades, which is right here in South Florida. And this is just a ballpoint pen drawing that I did on toned paper in my sketchbook. And then I painted the clouds white. I went ahead and I scanned that drawing. And this is a very quick color digital sketch where I added the color one layer at a time. So the first layer is all the way in the distance, and it's the sky. And then I slowly move forward. And this will give you a very quick sense of how to build color using Adobe Photoshop and layers and digital painting. I sped this up 64 times. So it's really quick.
How long was the full thing?
The full video was over 45 minutes. And I sped it up to 53 seconds.
45 minutes is still rather quick for a digital painting, I have to say.
The workflow in the digital platform is it lends itself to working a little bit faster than traditional materials. Just the fact that you can like color pick a color versus having to mix it, sometimes that's a big help. And then how the layers interact with each other is another way that you can speed stuff up. So Ms. Hunter, if I may share my screen really quick before we play the next video. I have Photoshop open up here. I have it open. This is what the final color digital sketch looked like. Everybody can see that, right?
Yes.
Okay. So this is, right, as I was mentioning, it's just a simple ballpoint pen drawing on like this kind of toned tan beige kind of paper. And I pretty much only used like I probably only used about 2 or 3 brushes for this, right? So then if we hover over here where the cursor is, we see the layers and how they're arranged, right? So at the very top layer, which is the first thing that you see, right? You have to see the layers as pieces of glass that you're looking through. And as they're arranged, you kind of see the whole image and how they're stacked, right? So that's the line drawing. Once it goes away, the whole thing kind of falls apart. That's the importance of a good solid line drawing when you're working digitally, right? So the line drawing creates a lot of the texture and it sets the boundaries for the color, right? So then that's the closest thing in the foreground. That's why it's at the top. And then we have some of the foliage, and then we have the water, and then we have the foreground sawgrass. So all of this sawgrass that we're seeing on the ground, I divided it into the foreground and the background right? So I'm just turning off one layer at a time so you can kind of see how everything is stacked and arranged, right? And then this is the sky. So the sky is really just a blue gradient with some white for the clouds. And then this layer kind of separates the original background drawing, which is all the way at the bottom. So I always make a copy of the line drawing so that I don't lose it. I don't mess it up too much. And this is the workspace for painting in Photoshop. There's all of these other workspaces here, which if I just toggle through them, you'll see the display and the adjustment panels that are shown are all very different. So Photoshop is used by a lot of different creative professionals. You can make an entire full-length movie in Photoshop, right? So you could do motion, painting, photography, more of a graphic and web kind of approach. You could even do 3D stuff. And then Essentials is just like the basic default one, right? So whenever I'm doing digital art, I always switch it to the painting workspace, okay? So this is what the final image looked like. If I toggle this, can you still see it? It
Yes.
still shows, yeah? Okay. So that's just a different view, just so that it's a little bit easier and cleaner and you're able to appreciate it better, right? So there's a lot of really fun stuff to learn in Photoshop, and the best way to learn is just by doing it, right? Okay, so it's time for that second video. For the second video, again, I started with a line drawing, but the line drawing needs a little bit of touch up. And I'm using actually mostly photo-based touching up to prepare the line drawing to then add the digital painting and the digital color. There's a part of the video where I just kind of stop talking. So I'm going to go ahead and just, I'll just voice over that, you know, the way that I'm talking right now. So there is a nice blend of photography touch-up tools and also digital painting effects in this next video. Should I stop sharing? I should probably stop sharing, right?
No,
Oh, no,
no,
you were able to do it?
got
Okay. Okay, thanks. I'm going to go ahead and open up Adobe Photoshop, Creative Cloud. We're going to go ahead and open an existing file that we have here. It's our shark drawing. There it is right there. I'm going to open up this one. So there's my shark drawing. I want to make sure that it's a good resolution. So it's 20 by 13, 300 resolution. Wow, that's impressive. That's pretty high. I do have a reference, just quick Google search here open on my other monitor, just to have something as inspiration to interpret what this shark is going to start to do as we add the color. Okay. Copy this layer. Let me switch this workspace to painting. And then I will go ahead and reset painting. And let's go to the brush. Okay, the brush is doing something. Okay. Let's go ahead and look at the layers panel. I'm going to be creating new layers and I'm going to be labeling them according to what I'm going to be putting on that layer. Okay, so one of the layers is ocean. Another layer is going to be shark. This is a fairly simple composition. We just have that one main shark in the foreground and the rest of it is the background. I'm also going to create a layer and just fill it with white so that the two layers, when they multiply together, we don't have a double drawing. So depending on how I arrange these layers, the background copy, I'm going to put it all the way at the top. And then I'm going to turn on multiply, okay? So you see now we're seeing twice as dark because we're seeing down all the way to this one. But if the fill with white layer is going to block this multiply layer from interacting with the background layer. So all that I have to do for that is just go to edit, fill, and just fill with white. I have that layer selected. I'm going to fill it with white and it automatically lightens it. So we're not doubling this shark drawing. We're only seeing one of them and that's going to multiply down to this other stuff. So the shark color is going to be in front of the ocean. Okay, so we're gonna paint in the ocean. We could do a couple of things to the ocean. I'm gonna add a little bit of texture of water above the shark. And because of that, the sunlight is gonna be hitting the top of the water here. So we're gonna do a gradient fill with 2 colors, okay? And we're actually gonna make it circular. Okay, so now I have to choose my 2 colors. The first color is gonna be a kind of Caribbean light blue grayish color. And then the darker color will be a deeper ocean kind of blue. And then once I click and drag, I will go ahead and fill that layer. I'm gonna leave this on normal. I'm gonna raise the opacity all the way up. And once I, bam, it already looks like it's underwater, just like that. Okay, so here all by itself, this is my ocean layer. That already looks like it's underwater, okay? So I have to get rid of these blue sketches here. I'm gonna touch up this layer so that it's not as dark. I'm gonna start by going ahead and desaturating it, which will take some of that yellow out of the paper. And that's just going under image adjustments, hue and saturation. And I just lowered the saturation, right? So from there, I'm gonna go ahead and play a little bit more with the contrast using levels, okay? So levels gives you a histogram, which is a bar chart of the amounts of each of the levels. The lowest level is the shadows, the middle is the midtones, and the highlights are way over here. So wherever you adjust these arrows, when you slide them, it's going to adjust the levels within the image, okay? So I'm trying to go for just pure, a nice light paper color with a nice dark for the shadows, but I don't want to lose my detail in the darker parts of the drawing. So I'm going to make sure that that stays nice and open in terms of its value. And then to get rid of the line drawings that are most prominent, I'm actually going to use a photography editing tool, which is known as the spot healing brush, okay? So with the spot healing brush, you adjust the size of the brush. There's a couple of different places where you could adjust the size of a brush. There's a keyboard shortcut that allows you to do it. It's just the right and left bracket. So once I paint, Photoshop knows that this is a kind of like a blemish in the paper. So all that I'm doing is clicking and dragging a little bit at a time, and it's taking the white paper that's around the blemish and it's copying it into where I paint. So the spot healing brush is mostly used to remove blemishes or spots on a photograph, but it works perfectly fine for what we're doing here, just to get rid of some of this. I hold down the space bar to pan around the image, okay? So if you get too close to something else, the spot healing brush is going to copy that into what you're doing. So whenever you're approaching an edge of something else that's different and you're trying to remove a spot, you have to be careful. So you always want kind of an even color around where you're painting with the spot healing brush, or it might start to copy stuff that you don't want it to. The tool that gives you more control about what you're copying into the area that you're trying to touch up, that tool, you see how I copied it again, right? So that tool is the clone stamp tool, okay? So the clone stamp tool allows you to say, hey, Photoshop, I want you to register this area so that when I click and drag, it's copying where the other crosshairs are down into that part of the drawing, right? So by holding Alt on the keyboard, you just click and say, hey, Photoshop, this is my target area. Go ahead and copy. Once I click and drag, it starts to copy that area into the the other part of the brush. So that is cloning the pixels. That's why it's a clone stamp, because it works like a stamp, and it's cloning the pixels somewhere else, depending on what you say is your registration point, okay? So I'm only trying to erase the blue parts of this shark drawing. So the nice thing about Photoshop is there's usually more than one way to do the same thing, or something that is very similar and not even noticeable, right? So I'm going to continue using the clone stamp tool here just to get rid of a couple more of these lines. So I went ahead and I sped up this part of the video a little bit. Just to get to the fun part, right? The painting.
Okay, so this is where the digital painting fun part of Photoshop starts. I now have a much cleaner line drawing that I could start to play around with brush sizes, with the brush pressure, the opacity of the brush. So I'm starting to layer this nice warm color that represents the sunlight kind of hitting the top of the shark. And as you can see, I'm playing around a lot with the size of the brush and the opacity. So every time that, let's say the brush is on, 30% opacity, when you paint over whatever is there, it's like a lighter kind of ghosty, dried out marker kind of a feel. So if you go over that part again, you're starting to build up the color that way. And this is actually one of my favorite ways to render digitally when I'm painting. I'll use a brush that has a little bit of texture along the edges so that it feels like the brush has a good personality. And then I'll go ahead and lower the opacity and kind of go over it a couple of times, trying to control the pressure that I'm using. And that does give it this very nice blended without over blending, super airbrushy, fake Photoshop-y kind of look, right? So it gives it this visual blending that you do with your eyes versus over blending, which is it's a very common mistake that people make, is they start to overblend everything when they're first using digital painting programs. I was trained very classically with analog, acrylic paints, oil paints, and I always suggest to my students, and I always recommend and encourage them to always learn the real materials. There's something nice about the physicality of working with those materials that then when you translate it into the digital realm, you really do have a better grasp of what those brushes in Photoshop, how they're going to behave, and how the visual texture that's built into the digital brush, how it relates to the real thing.
This shark painting took over an hour to do in real time. So I'm just building up different what are known as blending modes with the brush. So you choose a color, and then instead of just having it be a normal brush, if you change the blending mode of the brush while you're painting, it'll start to interact with the colors that are already on that layer in that part of the painting. And it starts to do really cool things that are very hard to achieve with just the normal blending mode on. So you see that juiced up blue that's in the shark there. That's an overlay blending mode in the brush. So it takes the blue that I had in the color picker, and it starts to mix with the colors that I had already painted on that layer. Something else that I'm doing here and there is using the smudge tool. So because the smudge tool is a brush-based Photoshop tool, you could actually pick the type of brush that it's going to smudge the pixels of color that are already there. So that's something that I was doing like in the underside, belly, the back of the belly of the shark, right? So I'm pretty much using just one brush here. For most of the digital painting, I'm just changing the size of the brush. Because I'm using a Wacom tablet, instead of clicking and dragging with a mouse, which would have been completely impossible to paint digitally, because I'm using a Wacom tablet, which connects to the computer, it's pressure sensitive. It has like thousands of different levels of pressure, right? It's got its little, right? It's got the stylus end there, and you draw with it instead of using the mouse. So when you want to move the cursor, you hover, and when you're ready to click on a mouse, you touch the tip of the stylus to the actual surface, right? And it'll pick up the pressure. So the way that I have it set up right now is the harder I press, the bigger the brush goes, right? There's a lot of digital painters that also will play around with the opacity. So as you press harder, the opacity of the brush does something different. When I'm painting, I usually just use the brush to change the size according to how hard I'm pressing, so that I don't have to constantly be changing the size of the brush too much, right? There was a couple of straight lines there and extra shark fins that I got rid of. And then if you'll notice, some of this is starting to get really white, and that's like the sunlight really hitting the top of the shark there. For some of that, I actually am erasing into the yellowish paper. So I'm removing the pixels on the very, very top layer to get it to be even whiter than you just using white paint on the shark color layer. Okay. So whenever I'm digitally painting in Photoshop, I also like to play around with lens effects, which is something that all of the animators at Pixar do as well, just to make it more believable and make it more true to life. So I went ahead and I added noise, which is a photographic like visual texture where you get a little bit of grain from a digital photograph. I added noise to the ocean just to have it feel like there was an underwater camera photographing the shark, right? What I'm trying to do right now is kind of like the last thing that I do is I'm trying to get some of the sun rays penetrating through the water. And I need it to make sense as it relates to that circular gradient that I put in the ocean. I need the light rays to kind of follow that outward radial idea of the gradient, right? The very last thing I did was erase some of the bottom there, and I actually blurred some of the little speckles of, just stuff floating around in the water. I went ahead and I blurred that so that it wouldn't be so much in focus. Everything kind of gets out of focus when you're underwater. When they were animating Finding Nemo, they built all of these new algorithms and programs into the rendering software just to make it look like everything was underwater, where whenever the sunlight hits it, it's kind of this soft, hazy bounce of light, because the way that light refracts underwater is different than how it refracts when there's no water. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen one more time, just to talk a little bit more about this digital painting that you just saw me create on the video, right? So fairly simple. We just have a line drawing, right? We have layer one was just the rays of sunlight. I forgot to label it, but layer one, right, is as I'm turning on and off, just the rays of sunlight coming through the water here. And then the shark layer is just all of the color of the shark, right? And then the ocean, and that's pretty much it, right? So Photoshop gives you all of this control in terms of what layers you can turn off and what layers you can turn off. I mean, turn on and turn off, right? And it's a lot of fun. I mean, the world of brushes in Photoshop, it keeps expanding. There's a lot of digital artists out there that they create their own brushes. In Photoshop, you could actually turn anything into a brush. And then you can play around with the settings for the brush. And it really is this very just endless opportunity of all of these wonderful visual effects and how you build up your layers. And you can save different versions of the same thing, right? When you sit down and you work on a more of a traditional painting, that's pretty much it. I mean, you can't really start shifting the colors or anything that quickly. So that's the advantage of the digital painting program is how many different versatile ways you can play with it. Okay. We do have some, I'm guessing there's questions in the chat. We can go ahead and start to answer. Didn't that turn out great?
Really, I mean, it was
really
incredible.
Thank you.
Great job, Mr. Lopez.
I'm really happy with it. I've been working in Photoshop since I was in high school, which was back in 2003 is when I first opened Photoshop for the first time. And I've loved it. I've always loved it. I've always worked digitally as well as traditionally. So just to kind of sum up a little bit more about the graphic design and illustration program and a lot of our magnet programs here at South, we bring as much of the real world as we can into the classroom. Okay, so we're always presenting, we're always giving our students opportunities to either showcase their work to a larger audience, or we bring, practicing artists into the classroom and give presentations that way. So we do competitions. We have artists from all different backgrounds visit the classroom and talk a little bit about their work. We collaborate with other visual magnet programs. We also do field trips, right? Obviously COVID is kind of ruining all of that for now. We also have colleges present, right? So colleges with art programs will talk to our students and give presentations. And you know that with colleges, you also talk about scholarships, right? So by the end of your career here in our magnet program, you would have artistic confidence, your own artistic voice. You would have a portfolio that will hopefully continue to develop as you pursue art, design, graphic design, illustration, right? Whatever word resonates for you within a creative profession, we want to make sure that that's the ultimate goal that you reach. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it.
So here's where I come in and tell you how you can become a student at South Miami Senior High. As I mentioned at the very beginning of the session, we are accepting off-cycle magnet applications. We have a small number of seats available in all of our programs, but I have to stress, it's not a lot of seats available. So if you are interested in joining either the graphic design and illustration program you learned about today or any of our other magnet strands, you can simply go to offcycle.miamimagnet.com and submit your application that way. It's a very brief application. Once we receive your application, we will contact you to schedule your virtual audition. This year, we are conducting all auditions online through Zoom. We've set up a pretty nifty way of making sure that it is fair and equitable to everyone. Your acceptance into our program is based on those audition results. In the case of graphic design and illustration, students would have to present a portfolio of artworks and participate in a series of drawings where we give you instructions to draw specific things, focusing on specific concepts. And then based on that results is whether or not you are accepted. Additional details about our auditions can be found at our school website, southmiamiseniorhigh.org. This is where we wanted to do a quick Q&A. Now, Mr. Lopez, I did receive a private message in the chat. One of the schools joining us today, they joined after we covered the general school information. So at the end of this, we'll rewind for them. But we did want to answer a few Q&A questions. If you guys would share your questions in the chat, we'll take a moment to answer those now. So Mr. Lopez, you said you had, you took about an hour to complete that shark painting?
A little over an hour, yeah.
Okay. And how do you decide that it's done? When do you know to stop?
It's actually not done.
Not done.
If you notice on one side of the fins, I think those are dorsal fins that are on either side of the shark that help it kind of steer through the water.
Mm-hmm.
on the other side, I haven't carried some of that warmer like underbelly, like warm grayish color. So I would probably want to push some of that, because usually on an animal, you're not going to have such a sharp division of color from one part of their body to the other. So you want a little bit more continuity through that dorsal fin. So it's actually not done.
Okay, okay, fair enough. You have a question?
Oh, I can't remember.
That's fine.
What is the difference between the versions of Adobe and the new?
The versions of Adobe Photoshop, what's the difference?
Yeah, are there like big differences?
Can you describe some of the differences between like the versions of Adobe Photoshop? Like what kind of Photoshop is available now and how is that different from what has previously been available?
Okay. In the year 2005, like that generation, there was a version of Photoshop called Photoshop Express that was it was cheaper and it was easier to use, but it didn't have as many features as the full-blown Photoshop Creative Suite. So it used to be called Photoshop CS, and then it was CS2 and CS3. They went all the way up to CS6, and then they switched over to cloud-based software, which is where all of the major programs were going at that time. So now they have what's called Adobe Creative Cloud, which is a cloud-based active like account where you could actually, they give you cloud space to store all of your projects. You kind of pay on a monthly subscription basis now. Before, you used to just buy it and then you would have it for however many updates they created for that version of Photoshop. But because everything was switching into cloud-based and everybody wanted kind of like the most up-to-date version of the programs without having to buy it every 2 years, they went ahead and switched to Adobe Creative Cloud. I think that was back in like 2016, they started offering cloud-based Photoshop, right? We do have licenses here at our school so that you can download Photoshop and the other Adobe software onto a personal device. While you are a student here at our school, you would be able to download it on a personal device, and we have them here in the classroom so that you always have access to it. I don't think they have Photoshop Express anymore. I think they discontinued that, but they did recently create Photoshop for an iPad as well. So it's the full like Creative Cloud Photoshop now is available for the iPad. The Surface Pro is another really popular tablet. And the Surface Pro just runs desktop applications. So in the world of computing and software, there's mobile device versions of applications, and then there's desktop or like traditional computer-based programs. So the big difference between the two is that one is a touchscreen and it needs to be designed to work properly on a touchscreen the whole time, versus using a keyboard and a mouse, which is more of a traditional kind of a computer setup, right?
Okay, that was a good question. I think. Did he answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions for Mr. Lopez? It could be about Photoshop or just in general. We have in our midst an illustrator who has his own business.
I'm publishing my first children's book that I illustrated with a local author here in Miami. The books are actually being printed right now.
Yay.
That was a great project. I did the cover and I did 8 illustrations for each chapter. That was my summer project last year for my illustration studio. Yeah. And those were all done with digital color. They started with line drawing, very similar to what I just demonstrated today, right?
Right. Okay, so I'm gonna just click on over to the next slide. But wait, there's more.
Well, wait, sign up now and get this offer as well.
We are having one more webinar. Last week, we offered a webinar on the photography strand, and we took a sneak peek of the darkroom and some photo editing processes through using Lightroom. Obviously today you're here learning about graphic design and illustration and digital painting. And on Wednesday, I'm going to be leading that one. And that one is classical oil painting techniques. I'm going to be painting a portrait of Mr. Lopez. So that should be fun. If you'd like to join that webinar, the QR code on screen is your direct link to registering for that webinar. It is at a slightly different time. This one will be starting at 11:20. If for whatever reason you're not able to join at that time, we're happy to share these recordings with you so that you can watch them and share them with your classes at any time.
We're recording these live webinars as we're creating them. So last week we recorded that one. So we're gonna edit it a little bit and we're gonna make that available to anybody else that missed it and wants to watch it. Okay.
Right. Okay, and then I will be going back to answer Ms. Fuller's request to review the school information one more time, but I did want to take a moment to share a little bit of contact information. Again, I'm Lizzie Hunter, lead magnet teacher. If you have any direct questions for me, you can contact me via email, lizhunter@dateschools.net. Our school website is southmiamiseniorhigh.org. That's a great place to get a sense of what our school is like and what the student body is like. See some examples of student artwork. There's lots of stuff to click around on. We keep our website pretty rich with information and updates. Our Twitter and Instagram accounts are also on screen. We invite you to follow us on those accounts. Again, another great way to get a sense of what our school community is like. We're going to stay on for a little while longer. If you've heard everything you need to hear, you may log off. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are happy to provide a recording of this session if you would like. Just let us know.
Thank you all so much. Stay artsy. Let's all do the cobra.
Oh,
Right?
wait.
Pound the elbows. Oh, wait, what? Oh, sorry. Pound the elbows, hit the back of your palms, right? And then the cobra, right? 1, 2, 3, cobra. We have to end each webinar that way. We just have to.
Okay, sure. Let's do it.
Thank you so much, everyone.